Our sailing trip took place in the Dodecanese islands of Greece, just west of the Turkish coast. The islands are mostly between 10 and 20 miles off the mainland, and because of this, the sailing area is well protected from swells and waves, making sailing a real pleasure. We boarded our yacht in the harbour of Pythagoria on Samos Island, named after Pythagoras. Our first day's sailing took us southwest to Patmos, arriving in the early afternoon, following a quick lunch stop at Marathi Bay. We remained on Patmos for 2 nights. Early the third morning, we left Patmos, sailing past Leros Island to finally moor in the tiny bay of Vathi on Kalymnos Island, which is very well known for natural sponges. After a good breakfast ashore in a local taverna, we left Vathi for the short 3-hour sail eastwards to Kos Island. Then, leaving the busy port of Kos, we sailed past the Turkish coast and eventually headed south to the volcanic island of Nisyros, where we hired scooters and toured the entire island. It was breakfast on board before heading east, enjoying the strong but steady Meltemi winds all the way to the Datça Peninsula, where we swung free on anchor in the delightful Overbuku Bay in Turkey. It was a short but exhilarating southeast sail to the island of Simi, where we moored on the quay for 1 night, and then sailed a few miles down the coast of Simi to swing free in the secluded Marathonda Bay for another night. After a bowl of fresh fruit on our yacht and a final Greek coffee ashore in Marathonda, we weighed anchor and headed off southwards to the bustling city of Rhodes, where we reluctantly handed our yacht back after almost 2 glorious weeks of sailing the Dodecanese Islands. Our sailing trip was not without its problems. By the Saturday, there was still no sign of our yacht by the agreed time. My call to the charter company revealed that the skipper transporting the yacht had an accident on the way to Samos. Although the marina staff had hurriedly tried to repair the damage, it was quite clear after our visit that the magnitude of the accident, in addition to the internal water damage caused by the near sinking of this vessel, that this yacht wasn't going anywhere. The charter company agreed to dispatch another yacht from Athens. However, it was to take 2 days to arrive. With 2 free days to wait for our yacht, we decided to hire a car and spend the first day touring the island of Samos and then to visit Ephesus on the second day. We drove all along the north coast road, visiting the mountaintop village of Manolates and the Potami waterfalls. We quickly found a car to hire in the main street of Pythagoria, a delightful street that is cleared of cars each evening and transforms into a late-night area to wander in complete safety. Our first stop was to view Konstantinos Beach from the coastal road. The crystal clear water is wonderful. The mountaintop village of Manolates was a labyrinth of narrow lanes and interesting art shops. We even found the true meaning of a real stopcock. Samos is a lush green island with an abundance of natural water springs, rivers and waterfalls. Potami Beach looked so inviting, but it was time for lunch and pizza was on the menu.
Thank you.
It's your pizza.
The walk to Potami Falls was a cool, welcome relief from the heat of the day. There was even time for Kim to differentiate between the wood from the trees. We seemed to have underestimated the distance to the falls, and we certainly didn't expect such steep terrain, and the stairs didn't feel that secure either. That's Woody Woodpecker. Our return journey around the south side of Samos took took us to the monastery overlooking Pythagoria, and the views were stunning. We looked longingly at all the yachts in Pythagorean harbour as we waited for our replacement yacht to arrive. Evening meals were usually enjoyed right on the water's edge, and we always found the food to be of a high standard and particularly fresh. We caught the ferry from Pythagoria to Kuşadaşı in Turkey. This city receives 600 cruise ships each year, with the main attraction being Ephesus. After getting off the ferry, we walked through the market area and then caught a dolmus, which is a shared taxi, onto Ephesus. We decided to walk the final 1 mile to the ancient Roman city. We were quite surprised to see how commercial the entrance is allowed to become. They even advertise genuine fakes and call a beer after Ephesus. The audio guide was an invaluable source of information which gave meaning to the various buildings we saw. Our interest in Ephesus is that it was one of the most important cities of early Christianity, and many biblical characters stayed in Ephesus, including Paul, John, Timothy, as well as the place where Mary, the mother of Jesus, lived. Ephesus was a seaport city located at the mouth of the Cayster River and was the capital of the Roman province of Asia and a center for superstitious religious practices, temple prostitution, and emperor worship. Being a trade center, it was commercially very prosperous, second importance in size only to Rome. Archaeologists have uncovered most of ancient Ephesus, including the theatre, which seated 25,000 people, the Library of Celsus, and the Temple of Artemis. It was clear to see from the ruins that the Ephesians lived in comfort, with running water, heating for winter, and flushing sewer channels for the toilets as well. In its heyday, there were 300,000 people living here, but their waste products were dumped into the Cayster River for many years, finally causing it to silt up the river as well as the natural Ephesus harbour, which had allowed easy shipping access. The latrines of Ephesus were also a place for socializing. At the end of Kuret Street is the triple-story Celsus Library of Ephesus and the city centre. Paul ministered in Ephesus for 3 years. Apostle Paul was sent into this pagan, superstitious and spiritually dark city of Ephesus. When Paul arrived, he went to the synagogue as usual and began to preach the gospel. Paul also told the Ephesians that Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but the people of Ephesus chose to continue to worship the Roman emperor, despite Paul telling them that there's another king, the King of all emperors, Jesus Christ, whom they should rather choose to worship. The response of the Ephesians who heard Paul was obstinacy, hardness of heart, rebellion and stubbornness. For 3 months Paul preached the good news that God saves sinners through his Son, but the hearts of most became harder and harder. A few who heard Paul had soft hearts, responding in belief to Paul's preaching, and they were saved. Paul decided to leave the synagogue along with all his disciples and those who chose to believe in Christ. Paul rented a hall from a philosopher named Tyrannus, and Paul taught in the hall of Tyrannus for 2 more years. Paul worked from 7 to 11 in the morning as a leather worker, and then he would go to the lecture hall of Tyrannus to teach from 11 to 4 during the heat of the day. Paul's hard labour in Ephesus bore fruit far beyond the boundaries of Ephesus, as he was able to send Christians from Ephesus throughout all of Asia Minor, and with the training in Paul's School of Theology at Ephesus, took the gospel to the surrounding areas and started churches. We are now in Harbour Street, the main entrance of Ephesus, from the harbour to the city. The far end of this street led directly to the harbour of Ephesus and direct access to the Aegean Sea. The river and harbour silted up for 4 miles, causing Ephesus to lose its access to the Aegean Sea. Besides Ephesus becoming redundant as a trade gateway, Their final demise was uncontrollable toxic marshes, which introduced malaria and dysentery, resulting in the deaths of the large majority of the inhabitants, all made worse by the king flooding the city by blocking the sewers in a vain attempt to control the diseases.